everyone. Welcome. We're glad you're here today for our lunchtime webinar. So as I said, you are at Promoting Self-Advocacy in the Workplace for Individuals with Disabilities. It is a Connections California presentation, and Connections California is a program of Parents Helping Parents, which is an online resource and information hub for transition to adulthood and adult services. We are a statewide program, so we try and keep the information general so that everyone in the state can benefit. And then we refer you to your local parent training information centers for more information about things that are available in your region. But today I'm very happy to welcome our presenter, Luisamaria Castillo, who is currently the area manager for the San Diego Imperial Valley counties of our sister agency, Team of Advocates for Special Kids, and that is the acronym of TASK. And you may recognize Luisa, because as until recently, she was the coordinator of Parents Helping Parents statewide program, Connections California. So she helped build the program, and we're very happy to welcome her back to present today. Luisa developed her passion for educating and advocating for families whose loved ones are approaching transition to adulthood and or receiving adult services during over a decade of service as a bilingual resource specialist at TASK. And now, as I said, she's the area manager for the San Diego and Imperial Valley counties. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Luisa and end my share. And there we go.
Great. Thank you so much, Alyssa, for that intro. I'm happy to be here with you guys today. And I just wanted to do a brief overview of who is TASK, what is TASK. Alyssa did mention that we are a sister organization with PHP because we're also a nonprofit organization known as a PTI, Parent Training and Information Center, serving the Southern California area. This organization was also founded over 40 years ago by parents that were navigating the special education system, and TASK has expanded to offer support across various counties. They include LA County, Orange, San Bernardino, Riverside, San Diego, and Imperial. And our mission is to educate and empower individuals with disabilities, their families, and the professionals who support them. We provide free services such as individual phone assistance and virtual consultations. We also host educational webinars and have an assistive department, assistive technology department. Now, if you reside in Northern California, you can turn to PHP for assistance, while in the South, we're here to support you with TASK. And our virtual educational workshops are available to all families statewide. Now, what are some takeaways for today? In today's webinar, we're going to be talking about why understanding disabilities is important, what it means to disclose a disability, and what are the pros and the cons of doing so. We're also going to be covering how and when to ask for accommodations at work, the importance of advocating for yourself, and a brief overview of the laws that protect employees with disabilities. Now, I know many of here must be parents. If you hear me expressing myself and directing this towards the youth, is because this really is designed for youth. And we really want you as parents to empower, your youth, your adults, to be able to self-advocate for themselves. So many times you will hear me directing myself to the youth themselves. Now, disabilities impact all of us. It's important to know that, if we don't have a disability, we're going to most certainly know somebody that does. In fact, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 61 million adults in the United States live with a disability. That's 27% of our population, or 1 in every 4. With that said, we know that disabilities really can impact all of us. Now, what is a disability? The definition found on CDC, Centers of Disease Control, states that a disability is any condition of the body or mind, an impairment that makes it more difficult for the person with the condition to do certain life activities, activity limitation, and interact with the world around them, so participation restrictions. However, having a disability does not mean that you can't do things. And that's why we see here limitation, potential. You or the person with the disability may just need accommodations or modifications which will allow you to complete the same or the similar task as others. Now, There are many types of disabilities out there, and it's important to know about them to inform ourselves whether we're the person with a disability, we have a loved one with a disability, or we're actually an employer or work, as a professional serving those that have a disability. Some of these may be obvious and some may be hidden or not easy to see. And we're going to be going over some of these. Meanwhile, try to write down the ones that you didn't know about, or maybe we're going to be sharing some information as well so that you can just inform yourself about what these are. So we have developmental disabilities, which are a group of conditions due to an impairment in physical, learning, language, or behavior areas. They can include autism, cerebral palsy, epilepsy, and intellectual or cognitive disabilities. Physical disabilities are conditions that significantly interfere with at least one major life activity of an individual. This could be an orthopedic impairment, health impairments like a heart condition, diabetes. Many people didn't know that diabetes can be considered a disability. There's also hearing impairments like deafness or hearing loss, visual impairments like eye disorders or being legally blind, or a combination of both, such as deaf blindness. So there's many types, and the list goes on. We have here speech and language disabilities or learning disabilities that involve understanding or using spoken or written language. Or in information processing, this can include dyslexia, auditory processing, short-term memory. Then there's mental health disabilities that can also be referred to as hidden disabilities because they're not often easily seen or noticed by others. These can be, for example, depression, anxiety disorders, ADD or ADHD, which stands for attention deficit disorder, and hyperactivity disorder. There can also be emotional disturbance, which can include, emotional, behavioral, or mental disorders. And we're going to be sharing a brochure. If you don't receive it right now through the chat, I'll make sure to send it so that you can receive it electronically. It's by Pacer, and the brochure is called The Categories of Various Disability. And this will provide you additional information about the different types of disabilities. So, although having a disability, can make us different, does it make us any less than others? We know that the answer is no. But why? Well, because we all have unique gifts, our own personalities, our own challenges, and no two people are the same. And that's actually a great thing because diversity is what makes life what it is, life interesting, fun. While we're all different, though, everyone has things that are also very common. All people, including people with disabilities, want to have friends, have a social life, be shown respect, and have the desire to be accepted and to be successful at their workplace. And although this is a true statement, not everyone will understand what it is for a person to have a disability and the type of challenges that they're going to be facing. That is why disability awareness is so important, which takes us to our next slide. Why is disability awareness important? It's important because improving our knowledge and our understanding of disabilities is going to help us accept and understand not only your own disability, but also that of others. To be empathetic and to understand the disabilities and the challenges of other people, you must first not only understand yourself, but also your disability so that you are more aware and know your own needs. By doing this, you're going to be able to explain your disability to others when necessary so that they can understand it better too. And you might be wondering, do I have to explain my disability to others? What if I don't want to? Well, know that when high school ends, if you are the person with a disability listen, you will no longer have an IEP team that knows your needs, and provides you with the services that you need to succeed. So if you're a parent, your son will no longer have an IEP team that is going to be providing, those services, those goals, those supports that he needs. From now on, to receive the support they need, your son or daughter will have to speak up, disclose their disability to others. And we're going to be talking more about what disability disclosure is and what it entails. So if we go on to the next slide, when you tell someone something that was previously unknown, you're practicing what is disclosure. Disclosure comes from the words disclose, which means to open up, to reveal, or to tell. And this is used in different ways by different groups of people. For example, if you want to buy a house and need a loan, well, this can be for a house or even for college education, you have to share or disclose your personal financial information with the loan officer at the bank, right? Disclosing means intentionally releasing information for a specific reason. And people may disclose disability information in order to receive an accommodation, explaining behavior, etc., to obtain services. Disclosure doesn't mean, though, that you're going to have to tell everything about your disability. It means that you're going to be sharing only the information that's going to result in accommodations that will promote success, whether it's in the workplace or at school. Now, what is the most important and helpful in providing information about your disability is that how your disability affects your capacity to learn and perform effectively, the environment, the supports, the services you will need in order to access, to participate, to excel in a job. So that is why this information can be very important and useful. Now, let's go over an example in which an individual made the informed decision to disclose their disability in order to receive needed accommodations. And I'm going to be providing a few examples throughout the webinar so that you can kind of, imagine it or picture it. So Carlos, he has attention deficit disorder, which is known as ADD, and he needs directions in written form because he misses steps when they're presented orally. So in order to fulfill his job duties, Carlos would have to disclose his disability to his employer, telling him what accommodations would help him do his job successfully. So this is something that he can request. Obviously, we're going to be learning further through the presentation. When should I disclose if I do decide to do it? Now, effective disclosure occurs when you are knowledgeable about your disability and are able to describe both your disability-related needs and your skills and abilities clearly. And you must decide what and how much of this sensitive information is necessary to reveal in order to obtain the needed accommodations. Now, maybe some parents are here and they're like, you know what, but my child can't do this on his own. He wouldn't be able to request it. And we understand that there's different types of disabilities and they can be more severe and provide or need more supports. And sometimes there's going to be agencies and organizations that are going to be there with your loved ones supporting them. Or if you are the one with the disability listening, there's going to be supports that you can go through, agencies, DOR, Department of Rehabilitation or Regional Center, that can provide you with job coaching to help you attain a job and maintain it. So this may look different for everyone, but we're here talking about maybe that, youth, that adult that has a disability and is able to go and disclose it and talk about it, but needs the supports or needs to know how to do it and needs the skills in order to do it. So I hope I made that clear in case you are asking yourself that there's always additional supports depending on the disability and the needs of your child. Now, only you can decide whether or not you will want to disclose your disability or any other sensitive information to other people. As with most informed decisions that you're going to be making during your lifetime, there are both advantages and disadvantages associated with the decision to disclose. On the one hand, disability disclosure can open up opportunities for you to participate in activities that you may have avoided and help you put into place a strong support system. Now, on the other hand, it can be scary to tell someone something personal when there's no assurance that they're going to be reacting positively to your news. And the list, this list is by no means exhaustive, but it can give you some good information to think about. And remember that what may seem a disadvantage in one setting or situation may actually be an advantage another. So what are some advantages of disclosing or telling somebody or sharing your disability? Well, it can allow you to receive reasonable accommodations so that you can pursue work, school, or community activities more effectively, as specified in the ADA law. It reduces stress because sometimes when you're trying to protect a secret or you just don't want anybody to know about something, this can take a lot of our energy. So that's why it can be helpful with reducing stress. It also allows you to involve other professionals. For example, educators, employment service providers, in learning of skills and the development of accommodations. It can provide greater freedom to communicate if you were to face a challenge in your particular situation. Now, we're going to go into some of the disadvantages because we don't want to be biased. We want you to make an informed decision that's going to be best for your needs. Now, what can be some of the disadvantages of disclosing your disability? Well, maybe you can feel excluded. It could cause others to be more curious about your disability. It could lead you to being treated differently or to be overlooked for a job. And as to anyone sharing personal information, it could be difficult or just embarrassing. So before saying if you will disclose your disability or not decide whether or not you will need reasonable accommodations on the job, but if you do think that you want to consider the personal advantage of disclosure. So look at your own situation and put the pros and cons as to why it would be beneficial. We're going to talk about another scenario here. This is Liz. She's 16 years old and she's eager to get her first real job. She has applied for a position working with 5 and 6-year-old children in an after-school daycare program. The director of the program calls Liz and tells her that she has the job and he wants to see her the next day. Now, Liz is wondering if she should tell the director that she was hospitalized after a seizure when she was 10 years old, but has not had one since then, and that Liz participates in several in and out school activities, gets regular check-ins with her doctor, and think about the impact now of Liz disclosing her seizure to her potential employer. What would be the advantages or disadvantages? So it's just something rhetorical to think about. Put your own situation in that place and think about what would be the advantages and disadvantages, knowing that you have the whole history. And remember that you don't have to do this alone. You have your support system, your parents, professionals, or educators that can be there to support you. Now, if they decide not to disclose, not everybody with a disability wants to disclose. Some young adults would prefer to be fired from a job or expelled from college than disclose that they have a disability and benefit from accommodations. Some job seekers choose not to disclose their disabilities because they believe that they can manage their careers in the same way as any other job seeker, or because they have become skilled at developing compensatory strategies and have the ability to self-accommodate without any assistance. And we're going to go over what are some of the alternatives if you choose not to disclose that you have a disability. For example, let's say people become drowsy during the workday. Well, they have the option, and this isn't something that you have to do, but they have the option of having a caffeinated drink. If they have a stressful call from a customer, they might vent to a coworker or take a short break. If they find themselves overwhelmed with new tasks or duties, they might make a list or discuss the issue with their supervisor to find a solution. If they find that it's hard for them to get up in the morning, whether because they take medication, because they don't have good sleeping habits, they might work a second shift so that mornings aren't so rushed for them. If they find driving too stressful, they might carpool, take a bus, or even move closer to work. So they might hire even monthly household cleaning support, pick up, ready to eat meals, use lawn or care services. So there's many ways that people can accommodate themselves to hectic schedules, stress, heavy workloads, and multiple responsibilities at work and at home. So, as you think about the ways you accommodate your own needs, consider how you might share these methods with your son and daughter. With these supports, you may not need to disclose at all in order to succeed. So it's all going to depend, on the needs of the person. Now, if you do choose to disclose your disability, when and whom should you disclose your disability on the job to? There may be circumstances in which disclosure is most appropriate than others. Accommodations may be requested at different times of your career. And we're going to go over a few scenarios, and well, not scenarios, but kind of circumstances of when you can disclose or not. Should I disclose in my employment application? Well, sometimes we ask ourselves, what do I do if an application form asks me for information about my disability? Well, employers covered by the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, and Section 504 must not even ask a job applicant or an employee whether or not they have a disability, so that this information cannot be used to discriminate against you. So a person doesn't have to provide this information in an application. How about pre-interview or at the interview? If an accommodation is needed in order to participate in a job interview, then you may disclose prior to the meeting. If an accommodation is not needed at that point, then it wouldn't be necessary to mention the disability. Now, what about after you've been offered a job or during the course of your employment? So once you have been hired, if you know that you're going to be needing accommodations, request them in the beginning of the job. If you don't, and you start doing poorly on the job, then the protections of ADA and 504 wouldn't apply to you. Because if the employer doesn't know, they're not discriminating, because they don't know you have a disability, you haven't disclosed it, and you haven't requested accommodations. So remember, employers or post-secondary schools are not required to ask you whether there's a disability-related accommodation needed. In fact, in most cases, it would be illegal to do so. For the same reason, if new accommodations become necessary as you learn the job or earn a promotion, you should disclose a disability to the appropriate person at the time in order to be protected by these laws. So that's something that's important. Also, the ADA and Section 504 say that you do not have to disclose it, at all if it doesn't affect your job performance. Many people with hidden disabilities, such as learning disabilities, seizure disorders, psychiatric disabilities, are afraid that they're not going to be hired if they tell an employer about their disability. However, if a person needs an accommodation in order to do the job, then they will have to disclose both the disability and the accommodation needed. Employers cannot provide anyone with accommodations if they do not know. Now, when selecting the person to disclose to, you want to reflect on the following questions, because we talked about who should I disclose to, right? Maybe you can ask, does this person have the power to determine how reasonable the request is for the accommodation? Can the person provide the required accommodations? Is the person responsible for hiring, promoting, or firing? Is the person in a management role, or will he or she support me? Or what experiences does this person have with similar disclosure situations? Do I have respect for and trust in this person's keeping my disclosure confidential? So these questions can help determine who you would be disclosing your disability to. Now, how should you disclose your disability on the job? According to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, an accommodation request does not have to be in writing. If you choose to do it verbally or in person, you can do so, but it's important to select a private, confidential, and comfortable place to disclose to, and allow enough time to discuss about it. Because the person or the persons whom you are disclosing might have questions, suggestions, or even concerns that require more time for discussion. And although you do not have to disclose your disability and request accommodations in writing, the EEOC suggests that individuals with disability might find it useful to document accommodation requests in the event that there would be a dispute of whether or not the accommodation was requested. And one way to document accommodation requests is to make a written request. There's no really specific guidelines or forms for requesting reasonable accommodations. Unless your employer already has an existing form, then you may use that. But there's actually a sample letter that you can use so that you have an idea as to how to elaborate the letter, and you would find it in pacer.org. I can't share it right now, but Alyssa, if you put Pacer or ask Jen, they have very good resources as well. So both of those websites can be very helpful in finding sample letters to request written accommodations. Now, what is self-advocacy and how does this relate to what we're talking about? Well, being a self-advocate means speaking up for yourself, telling people what you need and what you want respectfully, and taking action. Becoming an adult and learning to be your best own advocate will make a huge difference in a person's life, in your life. Speaking up for yourself will give you more control over making choices in your life, and it's going to make it easier to stand up for your rights. Advocating for yourself will help people around you better understand what you think, what you want, and what you need. And why is this skill so important? Well, self-advocacy helps a person be involved in the decision-making process, obtain what is helpful for a person, respectfully express disagreements or different opinions. And actually, Connections California, which you guys are here obviously because of this amazing program, has a whole section on the resource hub that talks about self-advocacy. So I strongly encourage you to check it out. There's so many videos, curated videos or even recordings that have been uploaded into their e-learning library that talk more in depth about what self-advocacy is and how a parent can start preparing their youth at a very young age to acquire these skills. So I encourage you to do so. Now, advocating for yourself is a skill that you're going to be using throughout your whole life. And here's a few ideas or strategies that can help you build your self-advocacy skills, or parent, that you can use to help your youth build these advocacy skills. Number one, remember you are the expert on you. No one knows more about how your disability affects you. The one person who can use their voice to speak up for you better than anyone else, well, we know it's you, yourself. If someone assumes something about you that is incorrect, speak up and politely correct them. Now, parent, if your child is still, if your youth is still under your supervision, we know that after the person, you are the one that knows most about them, and you're gonna help them understand and remember that they know themselves better than anybody else. Another one is giving respect to get respect. Show people the respect you expect them to show you. When you speak for yourself, talk to people the way you want them to talk to you. Go straight to the point. You want to say only what you need to say. Information about your disability is private, so you don't always have to tell people about your disability when you're advocating for yourself. And in many situations, one can just explain what they need, what you want, or what you think. Another one is to ask help. Ask for help if you feel overwhelmed. When a situation gets too big to handle by yourself, ask someone that you trust to get involved and support you. Asking for help is actually a very important part of advocating for yourself. No one has to do this alone, but having the correct support system can be crucial in learning how to self-advocate. And number 5, give yourself permission to make mistakes. Becoming your own best advocate takes time and it takes practice. And you can do this. The more you advocate for yourself, the better you're going to get at it. So practice. Practice is going to really build those skills needed to advocate for yourself. Now, some of the ways that you can advocate for yourself at work include asking your boss to explain instructions if you don't understand them. You can reach out to a coworker for assistance. Alternatively, if you've informed your boss that you have a disability, you can let them know what kind of accommodations you need in order to perform your job. We talked about the ways that a person can do this, either verbally with your employer, or you may decide to do it in writing so that you can document and keep track of your requests. Now, we have been mentioning the term accommodations throughout the webinar, and although you may know what they are, we want to make sure you understand, because a reasonable accommodation is any change in your work environment or in the way your job has been done in the past that's going to be allowing you to perform essential functions of your job. And reasonable accommodations are usually less expensive than people think. In most cases, an appropriate, reasonable accommodation can be made without difficulty, and at little or at no cost. This can include making existing facilities used by employees readily accessible to and usable by an individual with a disability, restructuring a job, modifying work schedules, acquiring or modifying equipment, providing qualified readers or interpreters, modifying a training or other programs. Now, if the accommodation are not hardships or financially prohibitive to an employer, they can be done. Also, keep in mind that the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, an employee is entitled to an accommodation only if it is needed because of their disability. And an employer can ask for medical documentation of the need for the accommodation. Now, accommodations can also it can include so many things, but some of them, it can be additional time to learn new responsibilities, maybe an alarm watch, checklists, pictures, symbols, diagrams instead of words, divisions of long assignments into smaller tasks, ergonomic chairs with extra padding, arm supports, ergonomic tools, handle build-ups, or other tool adaptations. It can be extra breaks to allow for stress management techniques, height adjustable table or desk, magnification of computer screens. It can reduction of workspace distractions. So there's tons of accommodations, examples that you can actually get at the website that I mentioned, Jan Accommodations website, askjan.org. So you'll be able to find some good examples of reasonable accommodations there. And I want to give you another scenario. This scenario is of Jeremy. So Jeremy recently received a promotion at work from a dock hand to a receiving clerk. He liked his new position, but his boss had to remind him several times to finish all of the required job tasks. In fact, his boss told him that if he didn't improve, then he would be demoted back to the dock. This information took Jeremy by surprise. He hadn't had any problems before his, this promotion. So on the receiving dock, he worked hard and efficiently. He would unload the trucks with few interruptions to his routine. And now in his position in the new one, he was interrupted all the time and couldn't always remember what he had finished and what was waiting to be done. So he was worried, and he talked to his dad that night after work. His dad reminded him that at home he had a checkoff list for his daily chores and activities. So Jeremy decided that it was time to tell his employer about his disability and to suggest the use of a similar list. So what did he do? Jeremy met with his boss. He acknowledged that he was having difficulties remembering all of the steps that needed to be done when receiving new products. And he explained, I have a disability that affects my memory, and I have this letter from my doctor that explains it medically. It would be helpful if the receiving task were on a checkoff list that I could mark when finished. Then I would be sure not to miss anything. His employer was happy to make this accommodation and keep a good worker. And this list actually worked, so it was initiated for everyone else in the department. So you see how in his previous role, he didn't need any accommodations and he was performing well. In his new position, he did. So he decided to disclose his disability later in the job, but he spoke to the person that was managing him, and he was able to do what he was supposed to with the reasonable accommodations, which for him was a verification list. Now, throughout the webinar, we have mentioned laws, that protect individuals against disabilities in the workplace. So, before we finalize, we're going to do a quick overview of the Americans with Disabilities Act and how this law pertains to your life as a person with a disability. If you choose to disclose and to self-advocate for yourself, these laws are the ones that will protect you in the workplace. And if you want more information, remember, you can visit the websites of ADA, Section 504, so that you can get a better understanding. But one of the most important laws for people with disabilities is ADA of 1990. The ADA is a civil rights law that protects individuals with disabilities from discrimination in the workplace, school, and other settings. Although ADA prohibits discrimination against individuals with disabilities, an employee who requires accommodations in order to perform a job must disclose information about the disability and the need for specific accommodations to the employer in order to be protected by the law. And that's why it's important that students develop the skills to do this effectively before they enter the workforce. The ADA states that private employers who have 15 or more employees cannot discriminate against people with disabilities in their hiring and firing decisions or in any other of their employee services or activities. Now, Section 504 has the same requirement for government agencies and businesses that are receiving federal funds. Now, one can ask, will ADA and Section 504 help me get a job? Not necessarily that they're going to help you get a job, but they can protect you against discrimination at the job, but you would have to disclose your accommodation. Now, if you're a person that needs supports, ADA does mention that each state has to have a rehabilitation department that is going to provide a person to get maybe job coaching or services. And here in California, that's the Department of Rehabilitation. So if you need that type of support, these are agencies that a parent or individual can reach out to. Now, I do want to mention there's so many great resources that can help. If you visit Connections California now under the category of employment, a lot of the websites that we mentioned throughout this webinar, you will find there. And even this webinar, it's being recorded, so it will be uploaded into the e-learning library so that you can watch it at your own time. But all of these resources are going to be provided to you. So with this, I want to leave any questions that we have. I know it was a short webinar. Very much to the point, but if you have any questions, I would be happy to take them. With this, we conclude our presentation, and thanks again for having me, Alyssa. I hope this information was helpful and informative.